welcome to our weekly webinar about all things HR. So our company, Pinnacle People Solutions, provides human resource advice, support, solutions, strategies, you name it, to regionally based small to medium businesses and not-for-profit organisations. We are here to help you and your business to adapt and to thrive. You can contact myself or my fantastic team anytime via Facebook, by email, telephone, YouTube, LinkedIn, website, and certainly you can visit our website at www.pinnaclepeoplesolutions.com.au and you'll find all sorts of wonderful information and videos and such up there. So as a continuation of our COVID-19 employer advisories, each Wednesday evening at 5:30, we'll be doing a deep dive into a particular HR topic in order to provide information and insights on topics of interest to regional business. So if there is anything you'd particularly like to hear about, please don't hesitate to get in touch. If you're watching this on Facebook, you can actually subscribe to receive notifications of when we are going live on Facebook by clicking the bell icon in the top right corner of your screen. You will never miss a HR update or webinar from us ever again. So if that appeals to you, then please click that bell icon in the top right corner of your screen, and we will very much look forward to seeing you join us every Wednesday at 5:30 for our webinars. So it's been a huge week already here at PPS HQ. I'm sure it is for all of our listeners. Lots of information coming, of course, and changes happening as they have been rapidly this year. 2020 has been certainly a year to either remember or forget, depending on what your circumstances are. But today we're talking about business restructuring and reorganisation, what it is, what you need to consider, and the best practice ways to manage the process to set your business up for success. Now, this is a topic that we've had a lot of requests for information and guidance about. That's our webinar topic this afternoon. And so I guess the first question is, what is business reorganisation and why would I bother? Look, while none of us have time to be constantly reevaluating our business, we certainly have done so far more than we would normally need to do this year in 2020. And look, it's really important on a regular basis, irrespective of the fact that we're in the midst of a pandemic, to take the time to consider the direction your business is going in, how that compares to the business goals that you have, and whether the infrastructure of your business, including your staff and their skills, are maximising the opportunities for the success of your business. It's also an opportunity to identify potential problems before they explode into actual problems, which can cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. Many businesses just cruise along, expecting conditions to just continue as they are and as they have been. Through the triple whammy of drought, bushfire and COVID over the last 12 months, we've all learned that small issues can become very big issues very fast in difficult situations. It's always easier to review and reorganise your business, make good decisions and apply them lawfully when you're not in the middle of a crisis. Okay, so what do I need to do? Or what are the things that I need to consider in relation to my employees? That's one of the questions we most frequently get asked when businesses are looking about potential change. And what I would say to you is this: if your workplace change will have significant effects on your employee or employees, you must do the following. Firstly, you need to consult with any and all staff who might be directly or indirectly affected. This means getting their input, not just informing them of what you're going to do. So all modern awards have a clause 8, which is called consultation and dispute resolution. And that is very clear about your consultation obligations. However, you should consult any award-free staff in the same way. So adopt the same kind of process and principle, irrespective of whether your staff are covered by modern awards or they're not. You then need to take the input that you receive from your staff about potential changes into consideration. You don't have to agree. You have to just actually consider the feedback that you get. And one of the questions we have is, what if I only have one staff member? The same situation applies. You do need to consult with them. Okay, so let's look at a few common scenarios and our advice as to how you would respond in those circumstances. So let's say there's been a change in operational requirements for you and you don't need anyone to do this particular role anymore. Look, in that situation, you can make the affected employee or employees redundant in accordance with the requirements of Section 389 of the Fair Work Act. The job they are doing must no longer be required to be done due to changes in operational requirements. The person can't reasonably be redeployed within the same or a related business, and you as the employer must have complied with consultation arrangements and requirements with the staff member about the workplace change, which is what we were just speaking about. If you have less than 15 staff, and importantly, that is 15 staff in terms of headcount, not in terms of full-time equivalent, you must pay your staff notice, but you don't need to pay redundancy pay. For these kinds of employees, redundancy doesn't apply. So I'm about to list these kind of employees. If they've had less than 1 year's service with you, if they're casuals, and that's if they're genuinely casuals, termination due to serious misconduct, they're a genuine fixed-term contract staff member whose contract is coming to an end. They are a fixed-term training contract staff member whose training contract is coming to an end, or apprentices. So they are the list of employees to whom redundancy doesn't apply. So what's the actual process that you need to follow in order to lawfully make an employee or more than one employee redundant? First and foremost, you need to identify the staff that are going to be directly or indirectly affected by the changes you're looking to make. You need to notify those staff in writing that you are considering changes. You need to give a summary of and reasons for the changes you're thinking of making. You need to set a meeting time at a venue that all staff can reasonably attend. You need to invite the staff member to bring a support person, not a practicing barrister or solicitor, because internal company processes are not legal processes. So you can specify that it can't be a solicitor or a barrister. And you need to remind staff that all matters discussed in this process are confidential. You should prepare a meeting script for this meeting that you're giving them a formal notice of meeting for, so that you know that you've covered off on everything that you need to say. You can invite staff to make suggestions as to mitigating effects for the changes. So suggestions they might make to avoid what negative consequences might come as a consequence of the changes, and give a deadline for suggestions. Let's say 5 days or 7 days as an example. You then want to set a second meeting date for once suggestions have been received and you've considered them. You need to consider the suggestions and see if any have any merit. And we've actually been involved in a number of workplace change processes where the feedback of the staff was instrumental and actually provided really good opportunities for the business to make the changes they needed to make, but to do so in a way that had minimal impact on the livelihoods of the staff. You need to notify staff of the second meeting in writing in the same way that you notified them of the first meeting. You need to prepare a meeting script for meeting number 2. You need to advise staff of the outcome, the changes that will happen, and how you're planning to implement those changes. And then you need to consider your implementation plan. So what are the changes to roles and the associated employment contracts and position descriptions for staff in those roles? What are the selection processes for any new roles? You need to determine if transfer to another job averts your redundancy obligations, whether you're actually able to find alternate roles for people whose jobs might be redundant in the process. And how will roles/staff be made redundant? Is that set, or do you need a further process to choose how that's going to happen? Finally, you would proceed to terminations if that's what one of your outcomes is, providing notice and details of entitlements in writing once termination and calculations are done. And then you need to notify relevant external agencies, for example, Centrelink. So if you're making more than 15 staff redundant, 15 or more staff redundant, you need to notify Centrelink as a matter of course. And finally, make sure all of this that I've just spoken with you about in terms of the process is in writing. That's incredibly important and will be incredibly important, particularly if your process is challenged in any way. Okay, so that leads me to the next question, which we often get, which is what can happen if I stuff this up? Okay, so interestingly, and in a timely way, I guess, for this webinar, a recent decision of the Fair Work Commission has actually just shown in one hit how a lack of proper business restructure planning combined with a crisis can lead to bad and expensive decisions for a business. And we're going to give you the link to this particular commission matter. So in this particular case, the employee in question was made redundant by telephone with no notice to him or any other staff. He applied to the Fair Work Commission for a remedy for unfair dismissal on the basis that the redundancy of his position was not a genuine redundancy. Given the conditions we've just talked about to ensure that a redundancy is lawful, can you see what the key problem was? Consultation. In this matter, the employer thought that COVID had changed the rules about redundancy and so blithely ignored their consultation requirements. And this is just not the case. Of course, there are other factors relevant to whether this was a matter of unfair dismissal, but the key point stands on the issue of whether it was a genuine redundancy. And while the amount of compensation that this employee will receive has not yet been determined, it's a fairly expensive mistake for a business to make when it's not that difficult to do things properly with good advice and good process. Okay, so another scenario that we've worked through with a client recently is on review of their business, one of their staff they determined was no longer a good fit or doesn't have the right skills that their business needs, but it's not a situation of redundancy. They asked us, how do I terminate them lawfully and sensitively? Now, in this case, lawful is the most essential concept here. When you're terminating an employee, you need to dot those I's and cross those T's to protect you and your business. You need to be particularly mindful of general protections provisions, unfair dismissal provisions, equal opportunity legislation at both the state and federal level, and the termination of an injured worker, if indeed you have somebody who is unfit for work for one reason or another. Of course, the way to make termination as straightforward and as stress-free as possible is to front-load the process. So what do I mean by that? Consider termination issues before each employee even begins working for you. Make sure that you've appropriately selected them, that you believe them to be the right person for the job, carefully craft their employment contract, make sure that they have a really well-written position description, and that you as a company have clear, unambiguous policies and procedures in place. And of course, if they're a new staff member, a probationary period. Other key aspects of lawful termination include the following: getting everything in writing. That notice of termination, if you're instigating a termination of someone's employment as the employer, or confirming notice of resignation if the staff member is instigating a decision to terminate their employment with you. Secondly, so firstly is get things in writing. Secondly, comply with notice periods. You don't have to accept more notice than is required, but put that in writing to the staff member. If they give you more notice than they're required to give you and you don't want that extra notice, you need to tell them that in writing, and you are not required to take the extra notice. If the staff member is over 45 and they've been with you for 2 years or more and you terminate their employment, you are required to give an extra week's notice. You can elect to pay notice in lieu, provided you pay all entitlements, including superannuation, for the notice period. Thirdly, employees must be paid their accrued entitlements. You can withhold some or all payment to cover legitimate debt to the business or failure to give the required notice. In that instance, you'd want to make sure that that's covered in your employment contract and or your modern award. You also want to meet documentation requirements. You must keep employment, payment and termination records for 7 years post somebody's termination of employment with you. You must provide a statement of service as might be requested by a staff member who's finishing up their employment with you. You may need to notify an external agency, as I said, Centrelink or the workers' compensation insurer if the staff member has an open workers' compensation claim. Return of company property is really important. You want to make sure that all company property is returned to you prior to the termination date. And a property return checklist can be a wonder and a very good help with this. And finally, an exit survey. So you want to ideally conduct an exit survey with the person who's leaving during the notice period. It can be hard to chase employees down after they've departed. And look, valuable information can be gleaned in the process which might help inform your next business strategy review or indeed a structural review. So with all of this information about restructuring, termination, redundancy, etc., what do you do now? What do you do right now? First and foremost, take a moment to consider whether now is a good time to review where your business is at, where you're going, and whether you have the right people and infrastructure in place to reduce risks and take advantage of opportunities. If it is the right time to do a structural change for your business, do it properly and get professional advice and support if you think you need it. Badly managed workplace change is an absolute recipe for disaster and will cause many more problems than it could potentially and possibly solve. Workplace changes affecting your staff are most definitely the riskiest. So use this information to make sure you're doing it lawfully and as sensitively as you can. If you're unsure about any of what I've talked about this evening, please get professional advice. Your people are the biggest asset, expense, and risk to your organisation, and it makes sense to take as good care of them with professional HR support as it does to get professional tax, accounting, and legal advice for the financial and other aspects of your business. We offer a free initial consultation with no obligation, so you can call us anytime or email us, and remember, we've got your back. So, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This webinar will remain online on Facebook. It will also be up on LinkedIn, YouTube, and our website if you'd like to catch up or watch again later, or there's somebody you'd like to refer to watching this and catching it up. We will also be producing a fact sheet based on all the information that I've given you this evening that you'll be able to download from our website shortly. You can also sign up for a weekly digest of our Wednesday webinar, our associated fact sheet and Monday news update to be delivered to your inbox every Tuesday by signing up on our website at pinnaclepeoplesolutions.com.au. So please join us for our Monday news update at 9:15 on Facebook Live to catch up on all the important news from the last week, both COVID related as well as general HR. For our webinar next Wednesday, we'd really love you to join us next Wednesday at 5:30. I'll be chatting with the Tamworth Business Chamber about why regional businesses should join and participate in their local Chamber of Commerce or Business Chamber. It's certainly been a huge asset to Pinnacle People Solutions to be members of both the Armidale and Tamworth Business Chambers, and I'm keen to share with you what those benefits and opportunities have been for us and to talk to our Chamber colleagues. So tune in next Wednesday at 5:30. We'd be delighted to see you. In the meantime, please hug the people that you can. Please wave cheerily at those that you yet can't. Stay safe, stay socially distant, wear a mask in public or where socially distant working is tricky. Wash your hands, keep up that fantastic hygiene, and we'll really look forward to seeing you on Monday. Thank you so much for your time.